Planners pondered parking, plazas, and other concepts they thought might be good fits for Manchester during a 3-day-long conference held last week. The annual meeting of the Northern New England chapter of the American Planning Association, which includes the states of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, saw municipal planners attending workshops and visiting various parts of the town. Several of the events focused closely on identifying solutions to issues in downtown Manchester, such as parking, affordable housing, repurposing buildings originally built for retail, and the town's overall connectivity, such as pedestrian and biking access to various points around the town. The conference got off to a quick start on Wednesday, September 6th, with a planning charrette, or intensive workshop led by members of the Orion Planning and Design Group, a Colorado-based consulting firm, and Janet Hurley, Manchester's planning director. Bob Barber, one of the consultants, led the approximately 50 people who attended the charrette, comprised of some of the planners attending the conference along with area residents, to explore some of the challenges perceived as facing downtown Manchester. Some of those included an inadequate amount of affordable or workforce housing, as well as the parking issues. The crowd divided into smaller groups to work through those questions. Bill Drunzik, a local businessman and developer, said one of the challenges for events like this was to produce strategies that could be translated into actualities.
For example, if you're talking about housing or retail establishment where the automobile dealership is, that makes all kinds of sense. Except now, where do you place the automobile dealership and the cost involved and so on. But that doesn't mean that they're not worth looking at. I think we have to do that. We have to spend more time how we can do some of these larger projects that we look at these impediments in the past and it's discouraged us from tackling them. But I think
Lana Haubin, of Manchester Designer Outlets and a well-known local business leader, also found the event interesting, as did Greg Beauchart, the chairman of the town's planning commission.
It's difficult. I think we all have a vision of what we would like to see and the functions that it would like to serve. And I think that this particular group seemed to focus on what would appeal to the locals. And I think everyone has to remember Vermont is a tourist area, and I think there was little attention paid for that.
The biggest takeaway for me was I think I felt some what's the right word? It validified, is that a word? The things that we think people want, and so the way our zoning's going, everything was reinforced by hearing what people had to say here tonight. But also to see a lot of people with similar views. And if we can all come together to share those views, we can make sure that the path ahead incorporates those things, especially when we're talking about spending town money to accomplish a lot of these tasks. So it was just nice to kind of get that reinforced through the people.
Many of the sessions the municipal planners from the 3 northern New England states attended were held at the Taconic Hotel and featured discussions about issues like growing a local food economy, legal issues involved in planning, and how to develop software apps. One of the sessions held on Thursday, September 7th, was also held at the newly opened Hampton Inn, where a group of planners and residents kicked around ideas on branding Manchester for the future, sort of like a Pinterest in the public interest, as workshop leader and Orion planning consultant Julie Beth Hines put it. Those in the room discussed how to attract more visitors and residents to Manchester and the area, with each table or group reporting on their findings and insights.
We have mountains, it's exciting here, there's lots of recreation, there's lots of business, there's lots of things to do, there's a lot of artisans, we have the Taconic and Equinox and this new hotel, which are beautiful places. So we are on the same page as far as everything, what people say about who we are and what we aspire to continue doing. Sadly, this is us. Sadly, we do have a lot of for lease places here in town, empty retail or spaces. Sadly, this is us. Sadly, it's us that there might be some empty sidewalks that don't look so pretty. Most of them do, but there might be some places where there's not like as much activity on the sidewalks as we would like. It is a little challenging in the commercial world to get things done here.
Basically, I've lived here for 30 years, and I feel like there's so much good going on here. I really do. I feel like our foundation has got great tradition. We want to build on that. I feel there's so much growth happening. We've been through some very tough times. I'm seeing growth. I feel like when I look at this beautiful town, you know, there is the families wanting kids that are, you know, coming out of BBA, heading to college, coming back and being able to find work. And again, you know, that all plays into, you know, things that we don't have. You know, we don't have the nightlife. You know, when I came here, it used to be you could go somewhere and go dancing. There's only like one place, so everything.
Some of them were familiar ideas that have been discussed for a while. Others were new. Attracting more younger residents and waking up the nightlife activity were two often repeated themes. Bob Barber, one of the planning consultants from Orion, also gave his takeaway on the conference to that point.
There's a tremendous opportunity for housing in the downtown area. You have many people coming to work here that don't live here. And we know that housing downtown is a key to a thriving downtown over the long term. And there's an opportunity there. The market, your studies show it. The NED's study showed demand. And so we came to town understanding that demand is there. The question is, how do you incorporate it appropriately into the downtown? So that's what we were trying to understand and plan for. That's the opportunity. In terms of the threat, you know, there's a conversation about long-term on retail. Retail's under tremendous pressure. It's a little different with the outlet malls. Outlet malls are not as pressured as other kinds of retailing. But yet, you know, Manchester does well to think about the economic activity downtown and the long-term viability. How will it transition as retail will inevitably transition over time? So that's I wouldn't call it a threat, but a concern to be mindful of. Never too early to plan for that. And then the opportunity on the housing side. There are others. Those are two.
Mm-hmm. So you guys will be developing a report and
developing. Yes.
Janet or the other town officials.
Yes, we'll aggregate the results of our time here. We will filter it through consultants' eyes and prepare a report to present back to Manchester, and of course Manchester will judge it, see if it resonates, see if it adequately expresses what the town wants to express, and then ideally that will be a guiding document going forward.
Earlier that day, several of the planners met at the town green and heard a bit more about some of those same questions being addressed by Manchester, such as housing, parking, transportation, and the future of traditional bricks-and-mortar retail. They took a walking tour of Depot Street and got familiar with some of the issues about transportation and pedestrian access. They stopped at several points along the way and heard Kerry McCormick of Crosspoint Associates, the developers of the Price Chopper Plaza, explain what their plans were for the plaza.
We went through local permitting with the town. We went through the Act 250 process with the state. The state put some modifications on us that have changed some of the economics of the project. Combine that with some of the challenges with the leasing has kind of stalled us, but we're continuing to press on our end as hard as we can, and we hope to move the project forward shortly. But it's what we have approved is knocking down basically the left-hand side of that center, putting in a brand new 40,000 square foot grocery building, and rehabbing the right side. The right side is actually in pretty good shape. It was kind of built in phases. The left side, and there's a 10,000 square foot bowling alley building, we call it, in the back, which is about to fall down if you breathe on it too heavily. Those are not in good shape and would cost way too much to rehab anyways. So those would be removed. Brand new standalone grocery building. It's a little challenged. If you looked at it, you may not have noticed, but it's a V-shaped building with all the parking kind of wedged in the middle with really unconventional circulation, not great. That would be fixed to do a little bit more traditional with a grocery store. The grocery store there is Price Chopper. It's about 15,000 square feet. They really can't provide the amount of options and operate as a traditional current grocery store. So letting them grow to about 40,000 square feet is where they wanted to be. So
The Green Mountain Power electric substation at the corner of Depot Street and Center Hill was another stopping point, and a discussion ensued about what other uses this particular corner could be used for. Screening off the power facility and making a small pocket park was one thought. Town officials have been exploring moving it to another location off of Richville Road, but the hefty price tag, some $3.5 million or more, has given pause. Gary Holloway, the downtown program coordinator for the state of Vermont, said he thought the conference was off to a good start, and also offered some ideas for the power station.
I think there's some great conversations about Manchester and what are some things that Manchester can do in terms of low-hanging fruit and making connections stronger along the river. It sounds like along Depot Street here, there's VTrans is going to be doing a repaving project, and they're going to be doing more of a complete streets approach in terms of narrowing the road, adding bike lanes, adding pedestrian crossings, which I think will certainly help. We're seeing that in a lot of communities across Vermont, and that has kind of certainly some economic benefit to it as well, I think, especially with retail along the strip. I think that'll make it a little easier for people to want to walk along this area with slowed down traffic, and it was interesting seeing kind of the power plant kind of discussion there. As far as what do we do, with this power plant. It sounds like there was a $4 million option maybe to relocate it, but I think there's some low-hanging fruit there as well, where you could probably look at kind of enhancements around that transfer station so you could make it more visually appealing and maybe more like a pocket park that is inviting for people to want to go to instead of trying to relocate the whole power plant itself. So anyway, I think it's off to a good start. Looking forward to the rest of the day.
Later that evening, several conference attendees met up at the Factory Point Place, the building that used to house the Factory Point Bank and is being converted over to condominiums and retail purposes. There they reviewed some of the input from earlier in the day. Lee Crone, the former planning director and zoning administrator of Manchester, who now works for the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, offered some thoughts and reflections.
Well, it's wonderful to see continued and renewed energy, really trying to continue to help make Manchester a better place to live, work, and play. It's wonderful to see some of the energy continuing for projects that we started or dreamed about 20 plus years ago. The Riverwalk, which was always a part of the Town Green project, but you do what you can at the time you can do it, and you leave some things for the next generation to pick up and run with. It's wonderful to see that energy. The rail trail that I understand is coming right along and is accessible now to people. And energy in terms of just what does Manchester want to be when it grows up? That question. We visited that some years ago, and here we are visiting it again, and that's okay. We all should do that with our lives once in a while. And to be able to harness some of the horsepower from the professional planning conference that we help bring to Manchester to help the community work through this process is a great synergy. And I'm just thrilled we were able to help that happen. And I really applaud everyone's energy, is really trying to just keep things moving in a positive direction.
The planning consultants will be collating and reviewing all the input received during the conference that pertain directly to Manchester, and will be developing a report that is anticipated to be available later this year. And then it will be a question of how difficult it will be to take those ideas from concept to reality. For the GNet TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.